Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, today we're opening up a file that's fundamentally uncomfortable. But look, if you're serious about building a relationship that's actually intended towards forever, this is essential stuff. P.G. Sebastian, in a really powerful essay, he gives this searing diagnosis of why so many modern relationships fail. And it boils down to something, well, structural, not just emotional flare-ups. He writes this, and it really hits. When one offers their prime cut, the fruit of their best labor, and the other offers only the bruised fruit, the mere residue of their effort, what follows is not just unhappiness, but a devastating law of consequence.
Wow. Yeah, that phrase, a devastating law of consequence, it really sets the stage, doesn't it? So our mission today is to unpack exactly what P.G. Sebastian means by this structural collapse. He calls it the theology of unequal effort.
Hmm.
And he's really challenging us, to look past the usual stuff like communication breakdowns, to see this deeper failure, this failure of non-reciprocity. And this whole deep dive, it links right back to the core mission of Steps to Forever, which is all about providing credible guidance for building that lasting commitment.
And that guidance absolutely needs clarity, especially when we're talking about these, well, tougher topics.
Because forever should be built with clarity, absolutely.
Okay, so let's start where P.G. Sebastian starts, with that ancient script, the Cain and Abel story. He argues this isn't just some old dusty tale. He says it's actually a blueprint for this unequal effort dynamic in modern partnerships.
Exactly. It's spot on. When Cain brings the bruised fruit, the leftovers, and Abel brings the prime cut, the real consequence isn't just like divine anger. It's an internal psychological implosion. Sebastian calls Cain's reaction the blinding rage of the self-accused.
Mm-hmm.
It's that unbearable feeling when you know your effort was subpar and you can't stand the witness to your own negligence. So you lash out.
So the tragedy isn't simply envy, it's deeper. It's that inability to face the mirror, to accept that one person genuinely gave their best and the other didn't. And PG's point is that this exact dynamic, this silent, corrosive imbalance, is playing out in homes right now.
Yeah, and you see the two distinct roles PG outlines over and over again in relationships hitting this crisis point. First, you've got the committed partner. That's the one who consistently, perpetually brings the prime cut. They invest their best energy, their best thinking, real sacrifice into keeping the partnership going.
Right. And then the other role.
That's the avoidant partner. This partner systematically, reliably offers the bruised fruit. Their effort is minimal, often just enough to look like they're participating. And it's always based on this underlying expectation that the committed partner will just pick up the slack. It's a profound structural imbalance they actually depend on. Which brings us to maybe the first big reflection point for you listening. If your effort in your relationship right now was a crop, is it a prime cut? Or is it bruised fruit? And maybe just as important, what does your partner see when they look at what you're offering?
Oof. Yeah, that's the real gut check, isn't it? Okay, let's move into how this shows up today. The modern offerings. P.G. Sebastian details these like invisible pillars that create this crushing imbalance. And we're not just talking about, who cleans the bathroom. It's the emotional labor, the cognitive load, the time, financial planning, actual intimate presence, navigating social stuff. And a big one, PG points out, risk management. It's like the entire underlying architecture of a shared life.
And that architecture, overwhelmingly, is shouldered by the committed partner. P.G. Sebastian really emphasizes that this gap often creates something he specifically calls the economic subsidy. And this is where the weight gets really, really heavy because it has tangible financial consequences.
Okay, the economic subsidy. I found that framing really striking. I usually think about the cost emotionally, but putting it in economic terms, like a debt, that really shifts the perspective. Can you break that down a bit more?
Sure. So the committed partner very often ends up scaling back their own professional path or ambitions. They do this to manage the nonstop complex logistics of the home, the family, the shared life. Maybe they pass up demanding promotions or roles that require a lot of travel, or decide against going back to school. Now, if you actually calculate the lost earning potential over, say, a decade, we could be talking 50, 70, sometimes even $100,000 or more. That difference, that's a direct, often totally invisible economic subsidy. It's provided by the committed partner, which then allows the avoidant partner to pursue their career path without those same domestic burdens.
Wow. So the avoidant partner's career success is quite literally being subsidized by the forfeited ambition of their partner. That is a heavy, unspoken debt right there.
It is a very heavy one. And the cost doesn't just stop with the bank balance. We also have what PG calls the cognitive load. Essentially, the committed partner becomes the default CEO of the home. They're the ones holding this constant, absolutely exhausting mental inventory of everything.
Yep.
Who has appointments when? What's the emotional state of everyone? What needs fixing? When's that school thing? What's our backup plan if X, Y, or Z happens in the next few weeks?
Right, that constant vigilance, that high-level, sustained mental effort. That's exactly what leads to that feeling of decision fatigue PG talks about, where even tiny choices feel overwhelming. And he calls this institutionalized ingratitude.
Hmm.
Your absolute best contribution, your mental bandwidth, your foresight just gets absorbed, expected. It's rarely even acknowledged properly, let alone celebrated.
And it creates this whole ecosystem where, frankly, the avoidant partner is quite comfortable. They've successfully managed to externalize the really demanding parts of adulting, the thinking, the planning, the worrying, onto their spouse.
Okay, so how do they keep the system going? How do they maintain it? PG Sebastian says the avoidant partner becomes a master of what he calls the choreography of minimal effort. Their whole strategy seems designed for plausible deniability.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And one of the main methods, maybe the most common, is strategic tokenism. This is about making contributions that are really only designed to create the appearance of effort. It's about looking like you're participating without actually incurring any genuine personal cost or inconvenience. It's performance.
Okay, can you give a concrete example? Because sometimes people are just genuinely tired, right? How does PG distinguish between exhaustion and this strategic performance?
That's a key distinction. It's the difference between, say, a heartfelt, present apology after a long day versus the emotional scraps. Like it's that brief, distracted hug while they're clearly still scrolling on their phone or asking, "How was your day?" But their eyes glaze over the second the committed partner actually starts talking about a real issue. It's like checking a box. It lets them say, "See, I asked," or "I helped," but the quality is so low, the effort so minimal. Honestly, PG suggests it can often feel more insulting than if they hadn't bothered at all.
Wow, okay. That distinction is really critical. It's not about the action itself, but the presence, the intention, the actual quality behind it. But what happens when the avoidance becomes more deliberate? PG Sebastian describes another really frustrating dynamic he calls passive sabotage.
Ah, yes, passive sabotage.
Yeah.
This one is, well, it's masterful in a really damaging way. The avoidant partner agrees to do a task, but then they perform it with such predictable incompetence, such a deliberate lack of thoroughness, that the committed partner basically knows they'll have to step in and redo it properly.
So are we talking about things like leaving the dishes mostly clean but not quite? Or is it bigger things like agreeing to handle the family budget but then forgetting to pay critical bills, claiming, oh, I'm just terrible with details?
It's often more like the latter, but disguised with the excuses of the former. It's basically weaponized incompetence, manufactured inadequacy used as an offloading tactic. By consistently failing at the task, they ensure the responsibility eventually just slides back onto the committed partner, all while the avoidant partner gets to maintain their narrative. Well, I tried, I'm just not good at that sort of thing.
And to keep this whole complex system of avoidance running, they need a defense mechanism, right? PG calls this the rationalization machine.
Exactly. And this machine runs on a whole litany of excuses. I was just too busy, I'm not naturally organized, I forgot, things have been so stressful at work. They're all designed to deflect any real accountability. Essentially, they turn their negligence into a fixed personality trait. By saying, I'm just not a details person, what they're really saying is, therefore, I am permanently excused from ever having to carry the cognitive load associated with details.
And the psychological toll on the committed partner must be immense. It sounds like gaslighting almost, because when they try to point out the unequal effort, the avoidant partner just deploys the pre-approved excuse, which can make the person actually carrying the load feel like they're being unreasonable or nagging.
And, we as a society often reinforce this dynamic without even realizing it. Think about it just for a second, you listening right now. How often are the minimal, very visible efforts of an avoidant partner praised way out of proportion? Like, oh, wow, he actually watched the kids for an hour by himself. Meanwhile, the constant, complex, often invisible maintenance work done by the committed partner goes completely unnoticed, completely uncelebrated. Tokenism often gets a bigger reward than sustained, comprehensive effort. It's wild.
Yeah, it really fosters that dangerous entitlement mindset PG talks about, where the avoidant partner just expects the comfort and stability their partner provides to be self-replenishing, like magic. PG Sebastian uses this really powerful, almost brutal metaphor to describe where this imbalance ultimately leads.
He does. He paints this picture of the relationship as a broken-down car stalled on a busy highway. Both partners are apparently behind it, hands on the bumper, making grunting noises, looking like they're pushing. But the car is only inching forward because of the raw, singular, exhausting effort of the committed partner, the avoidant partner. They're just maintaining the illusion of pushing. They're functionally dead weight, just along for the ride their partner is providing.
Gosh, that image, the dead weight behind the car, it's genuinely painful because, so many people listening can picture that exact feeling, that moment of realization. And the reckoning, PG says, it's usually not some big dramatic explosion. It's often just the slow, agonizing sound of the pushing finally stopping. The committed partner, just in a final, desperate act of self-preservation, has to step away. He calls it the body and soul's primal scream for balance.
Right. And then comes the truly tragic final act in this whole drama. When the shared life finally collapses under the weight of this structural failure, because the avoidant partner refused to lay their share of the bricks, they're suddenly forced to confront their contribution to the failure, or lack thereof. But the psychological cost of actually internalizing that level of sustained negligence, PG suggests it's often just too immense for them to bear.
So instead of taking accountability?
Instead of accountability, they often react with what Sebastian describes as devastating, displaced narcissistic fury. They immediately launch into character assassination against the partner who left. Suddenly, the person who carried all the weight is painted as the cold, heartless villain who just abandoned the relationship for no reason.
Wow, so they basically try to destroy the witness.
They try to destroy the only witness to their unequal effort.
Yes.
It allows them to maintain their sense of victimhood and avoid that crushing burden of self-blame. It's like a scorched earth policy against the truth itself, because they just cannot accept the mark, as PG puts it, of their own negligence. Which leads us to another key reflection point. Are you, in your relationship, building something based on shared effort? Or are you maybe operating from a place of entitlement, just expecting comfort and stability to be a self-replenishing resource provided by your partner?
Okay, the diagnosis is definitely sobering, but it's necessary if we want clarity. So now let's shift focus to the prescription. What's the way out of this? PG Sebastian, drawing on his extensive background, specializing in family counseling, working with diverse groups like military personnel, judges, navigating those complex intercultural relationships, he proposes a pretty radical solution.
He does. He argues very strongly that breaking this destructive cycle requires a fundamental shift from the avoidant partner. They have to move from what he calls a consumer mindset to a true contributor mindset. It means demanding that prime cut standard from both partners, not just occasionally, not just when things get bad, but proactively as a basic way of operating in the relationship.
So what does that actually look like? What does the avoidant partner need to do to make that transition, to become a genuine contributor?
Well, first and foremost, PG says they have to evolve beyond just reacting to crises or waiting to be told what to do. They need to start proactively anticipating needs. They need to execute tasks fully, thoroughly, without needing constant oversight or management. They have to genuinely take on the full cognitive load for specific agreed-upon areas of this shared life.
Yeah.
And crucially, they need to do it completely reliably so the committed partner doesn't feel they constantly have to check their work or worry that won't get done right.
Right. And PG Sebastian also emphasizes that for couples really stuck deep in this dynamic, external help is often vital.
Absolutely. He stresses that counseling needs to go beyond just surface-level communication issues. It has to dig into the deeper pathology, the entitlement, the resentment, maybe even the fear that drives the avoidance. And importantly, it needs to acknowledge that invisible economic and emotional debt that has accrued over time.
Ooh.
And related to that, he introduces this concept of doing an inventory of effort. This isn't about keeping score in a petty way. It's a regular, honest, non-defensive assessment. Looking at who is truly bearing the costs, emotional, financial, cognitive of Almeida, keeping the relationship stable and functional across all dimensions. The goal isn't blame, it's clarity. It's designed to finally illuminate the subsidy the avoidant partner has been receiving, to force them, perhaps for the first time, to really confront the truth they might have been working very hard to deny.
And facing that truth with courage, PG argues, that's the only real catalyst for genuine change, and maybe the only way to start actually building that relationship truly intended towards forever.
Yeah, the enduring lesson that PG Sebastian leaves us with is pretty stark but clear. The structure of a marriage or any committed partnership, it must be built on shared effort, shared responsibility. If it's not, it inevitably collapses onto the shoulders of the single, weary carrier. And the only way forward, particularly for the avoidant partner, is to stop trying to, assassinate the truth and instead accept the mark of their past negligence, not as a final judgment, but as a starting point, a challenge for future action.
Wow. That ancient story ends with Cain being marked by the consequence of his actions. So, the final thought for you listening, in your relationship right now, what is the mark of your current effort? Is it reflecting a debt that's owed or an investment that's being shared?
We really encourage you to dive deeper into PG Sebastian's crucial insights on building these kinds of lasting relationships. You can find more of his materials on his Substack blog, which is also called Steps to Forever, or on his counseling website blog at pgsebastian.com/Borge blog.
Thank you so much for joining us for this really crucial deep dive today.
And always remember,
Because forever should be built with clarity.